Ever-loving God, mindful of your looming birthday, may we best prepare for the way of your gifts and your plan. We unite in the mission of providing watchful and ready waiting. As we continue our Advent journey, we link now in prayer to conjoin our hearts and to lift up each other's intentions. God, please help my parents to have a good Christmas with good health and hope for the new year. Help our country come back together with pride in what it means to be one nation under God. Help me to find a new job by the new year. In thanksgiving for my brother's release from the hospital today, may he fully recover. God, give me strength, wisdom, and hope to get through current challenges in my life. For our friends who are quarantined from exposure to COVID-19, may they stay healthy in body and mind. For peace and healing for the whole world. Heal and support my best friend as she deals with the death of her mother. For healing, forgiveness, restoration, and reconciliation from my parents' marriage. Please help me discern my next steps. Grant me wisdom and good judgment as I contemplate my next move. Help our country come back together after all of the political division and be mindful of how to better serve your plan. And now the Advent antiphon. O Key of David, O royal power of Israel, controlling at your will the gate of heaven, come break down the prison walls of death for those who dwell in darkness and the shadow of death, and lead your captive people into freedom. God, hear our prayers. Calm our hearts, embolden our hopes, and lead us closer to you as we count down the celebration of your earthly birth and its promise of eternity with you in heaven. We ask this in your name. Amen. Greetings and welcome again. We're once again broadcasting from the campus of Ottawa University in Ottawa, Kansas, from the Martin Meditation Chapel. You are here with us, and we are glad to have you. So, some things to talk about as we start. Yesterday, we just finished doing living Christmas cards, and that was a neat idea that was brought to us, remember, in talking about how to do things in this COVID environment. So, a bunch of dear people dressed up as different Christmas characters, and they acted out Christmas cards, and then they sang Christmas carols, and then we put some comedy into it, and we would go outside the windows of people that were shut in, homebound, or those that were in care centers, nursing homes, and we would perform to bring a little Christmas to them. And in Kansas, friends, it's really cold, so we were cold. But I'll tell you, it was awful warm on the inside. I'm so proud of this group, and for any of you that were watching or are watching today, thank you. As I said to them as we talked about it, when we reflect on COVID, as COVID fades into memory, we'll have the ability to know that we did something. And the smiles on people's faces and for people in the nursing homes singing from behind their windows, it's a really powerful thing. The other thing we're doing here at the Ottawa campus in Kansas is that we are doing a lot of stuff. We have an angel tree, we have adoptive families, and I think a lot of other folk at campuses are doing that. And to me that, especially this year, there's been a lot of need, is a very powerful thing, especially because some of the folk that are helping this year are people that are in need themselves. And so I'm always grateful and humbled to be a part of that, proud of being a part of that. That brings out the best and gives us something to do. So I got to thinking as we were doing our acting out of Christmas cards about all the Christmas music. We sang carols, we did cards, the pictures that come in your head, and the songs that you hear, that some of the few songs that I can actually sing and not have to look at the words for, because I've sung them so many times. And I really love them. I think they're grand. But I also realize that I don't always think about them as much as I enjoy singing them, or pay much attention, because I'm used to Christmas images like Mary and Joseph and Jesus and stables and mangers and all the other secular things as far as Rudolphs and Grinches, and it's just that pleasant nostalgia of Christmas. And so as I was thinking about that, I realized that I read my emails as I do, and I got a question, a fairly long one, and it might be from a student, it might not. There was no student ID used, but it really talked about basically, why is God so mean in the Old Testament? That's paraphrasing it, and there was some pretty valid points. So whoever happened to write that, yeah, I get that. It is hard sometimes, I think, to reconcile the concept of Christ's birth and the promise of living as a Christian, of all the things that Jesus role modeled and the sacrifice that he gave for us to redeem us, with some of the vengeance and smiting of the Old Testament. I think that is a struggle. So it really made me reflect on what we've been speaking on in the last few weeks, talking about being an active Christian and defining the concept of power and might, which we've talked about as power and control. Thinking about in the realm of Rudolph, where are all those reindeer games that they wouldn't let Rudolph play? And in that circle of influence and circle of concern. And how much do we participate in that? And as I was doing that, I looked in the mirror and realized that I'm to the point now where my mask is starting to give me acne. I feel like I'm doing the right things for the right reasons on that, friends. You know I'm a huge proponent of masks. Why am I being punished? You get in your mid-50s, you should not have acne, right? There's some interesting thoughts then that says where power and might can join, where the Christmas expectation is, there's always a price. It's that concept then of where rights and responsibilities meet. And sometimes that doesn't mean that you get glowing skin and look lovely. I'm well past the age of caring, but I have to say there's something about looking in the mirror and watching little tiny dots lying where my mask was. That's pretty sad to me. I don't want to be in Christmas photos looking like that. Or do I? Does that define what I'm doing? Should I be proud? Is that my badge of courage? And that finally led me to thinking about today's chapel theme. And that in so many ways is what was the manifestation between Old Testament and New Testament that led to the lesson that we should have learned in the garden. The one we weren't ready for. God told us not to eat it yet. We did. That fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And how it manifests from ignorance and maybe even to apathy, to the present now of where we actually can do something, even though the world swirls in so many different ways. The difference between because I said so and because it's the right thing to do. And that is where Advent leads us, to figuring out those differences between God told me so, don't know why, can't sacrifice my kid, was going to, angel stayed my hand, because it's the right thing to do. Because God said it, and now it makes sense to me. So that will be our reflection for Advent Ponders. Listen to Scripture. I will share a little bit of my thought on my own Advent Ponders this year especially, and hope that maybe that will help not only reconcile the question between that weird balance of God of power and God of might, but also where you can find your own Lenten Advent connection. God of birth and God of sacrifice. And then we can live our lives that way in the periods in between. Thank you again, and welcome.
If a wise man has an argument with a fool, the fool only rages and laughs, and there is no quiet. Bloodthirsty men hate one who is blameless, and seek the life of the upright. A fool who full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back. If a ruler listens to falsehood, and all of his officials would be wicked, the poor man and the oppressor meet together. The Lord that gives light to the eyes of both. If a king faithfully judges the poor, his throne will be established forever. Proverbs 29.
I will come to you in the silence. I will lift you from all your fear. You will hear my voice. I claim you as my choice. Be still and know I am here. I am hope for all who are hopeless. I am eyes for
who dwell in shame. All the blind will see, the lame will all run free, and all will know my name. I'm the word that leads all to freedom. I'm the peace the world cannot give. I will call your name, embracing all your pain. Stand up now, walk and live. Do not be afraid, I am with you. I have called you each by name. Come and follow me, I will bring you home. I love you and you are mine. I love you and you are mine.
One person esteems one day as better than another, while another esteems all day alike. Each one should be fully convinced in his own mind. The one who observes the day observes it in honor of the Lord. The one who eats, eats in honor of the Lord, since he gives thanks to God, while the one who abstains, abstains in the honor of the Lord, and gives thanks to God. For none of us lives to himself, and none of us dies to himself. For if we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. So then, whether we live or whether we die, we are the Lord's. For this to end, Christ died and lived again, that he might be Lord both of the dead and of the living. Romans 14, verses 5 through 9.
So my friend here at the Ottawa campus, my friend Janet, taught me a new term, and it's called doom scrolling. Now, I had no idea what doom scrolling was. They had to tell me. And basically what they said is it's reading the headlines that you see on the news and getting more and more sad or depressed or frustrated or angry, but not being able to stop reading them. So you're sitting at your computer and all these things pop up, and it's doom and death and destruction and riots and issues, and you just keep reading and you keep reading and you can't stop. It's the mind's eye you cannot poke out. I guess maybe I doom scrolled some. I had to learn a few weeks ago about blog trolls. One of these chapels, was trolled by a man who basically said, how can you see these things? You know there is no God. Why are you filling people full of all this crap? And it was a fairly long blog, too. So it was like a note that was there. And then I went, and he has a blog that basically says Christianity is numbing to the masses or something. So, I mean, he has a point. But we're here in Ottawa, Kansas, and he's back east somewhere. So we're not a very large fish, I would think, to go on the radar of the average blog troll. So, first off, we got a grant, which is awesome, from the American Baptist Home Mission Society, and it's the Palmer Grant. And one of our factions with that, with Pastor Matt Sturdivant, who you saw a few weeks ago, is that we are going to start a ministry to minister to blog trolls. We're calling it Trolling for Trolls. And what we figured is this: if a random stranger can find a random stranger and do such a diatribe on things that they don't like, that maybe those people are incredibly lonely. One of my challenges as a Christian always is, how do you love your enemies? Is that person my enemy? Well, I don't think so. Am I theirs? I hope not. But maybe I am. Maybe I'm their enemy. How do you really love that person? And where do you have some skin in the game? So in other words, if the person that you detest the most in the world is having a house fire and you're the first one to see it, would you at least call the fire department? Now, that's different than would you go in and save them. I would say as a Christian we're called to do both. How realistic is that? So we will try to minister to blog trolls, not to try to convert them to any point of view, but just to say, hey, you want to chat? It sounds like you're lonely. You can argue with me as long as you want, if that helps you. We'll see how it happens. So thanks to Matt, and thanks certainly to the American Baptist Home Mission Society. We will see how all this stuff works out. For doom scrolling, what I've realized is that's a great thing to talk about power and control, about reindeer games in general. So This morning on the news, I saw some things about, the Electoral College and leading into now the swearing in of President-elect Biden. And I saw that there's a second vaccine which has been approved. So now we have another ability to tackle COVID. And then a bunch of stuff popped in asking for political contributions, which to me, in a point where I'm like, okay, I'm sort of done and past this, was really strange. And I'm sure some of you have gotten them. I, as you know, am pretty simple on electronics, but it was an email that was just to me from an important political person saying that they needed and wanted my help, and then telling me how much I could donate. And I thought, when will this end? Really? Are we in a continual election cycle now? I am much more interested in hearing the successes of the vaccine or thinking about the inauguration and what the country's next chapter will be than I am about donating for whatever reason to something that was clearly from a particular political party. And that's when I thought in the realm of power control, it stops when I choose for it to. Now that stuff is just spam, unless I make it something else. I have the choice there. In the realm of power and control, I have the power. I just don't read it. I just don't doom scroll. I cannot be controlled by those things if I just stop. It's tempting not to. And that's rough. We are at a time right now where it's tempting, I think, because we've been in a time that is pretty controlling, to reflect back on the Old Testament in maybe more of a positive light. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just say, this is what is right, and if you don't believe it, I will conquer you. But understanding that conquering then sometimes comes with smiting women, children, and sheep. So you may win the battle, but you don't exactly win the war. Certainly for minds and hearts, as they are no longer living. That becomes an issue that says, might then, there are times for it, but is easier, because there's a start and a finish. The season ends then. Might in itself is what we're living in now. A thing that says that the season is commanding and then it will end. The political season, we are used to it being filled with commercials and many ads that are pretty harsh, and then it goes away. Well, it needs to go away. What if it doesn't go away? Does that mean it still controls us? No, we just don't play the reindeer games. So the Christmas card then, it changes from the secular to the scriptural. That's our choice. We put it in our lens and our filter. That changes things then, going from control to power. Even if we focus in our mind's eye and not on the card in front of us, we can still set the Christmas theme that we want. We can choose from Rudolph to Frosty to Jesus. We can make our favorite Christmas memory. And that's a personal choice. And no one can tell us what to do with that. And yours may not be mine, nor does it need to be. But if it puts our heart in the right place, it doesn't really matter what the picture is. It inoculates you like we hope the COVID vaccine does. So no matter what people breathe on you in toxicity as bog trolls or doom, you're inoculated to it. You have that secret piece of you that goes, yeah, I know, but it really has a happy ending. And we have a lot of work to do. So when you're done just nagging, if you want to join me, here are the things we can do. Power control has always sort of been a challenge for me. I will tell you, if you have not parented, you'll find out. And if you have parented, my children, who I tell on quite a bit, were sometimes a little coarse in their public displays of things. My youngest son had the loudest burp on God's green earth. A burp that was so filled with bass that when he did it, it would startle people. And he did it for a long period of time, and he thought it was cute, which frankly it was, but I shouldn't have laughed at it, because it's cute when you're 6, but it's not cute when you're 16. And he would say things like, better out than in. And would say that's just part of me when he was 16, because everything was part of him, and he didn't like to follow rules much. How do you tell a 16-year-old that they can't publicly burp and have them paying attention? Well, the controlling thing is to just forbid it. I forbid you to burp loud. That did not work, I assure you. And I only tried it once because I was annoyed, and I knew it wouldn't work anyway. I tried bribery. Yeah. We had a game that said, how many days can you go without loud belches? Because I thought he was getting addicted to it. He would burp as a statement of making conversation. He would burp when he walked up to people, so they would say, oh my. He would burp when he didn't approve of something. He would burp when he was happy. He would burp when he was sad. It was very Seussian. He became the master burper. He had burp competitions with his friends. He would swallow air like a fish and burp, something I cannot do. Maybe I'm jealous. I thought about that. And he would burp loud. He got to the point where he could burp words. This was a period of 16 to 17, a whole year of talking in burps. I was quite concerned of what he was going to be when he grew up, but I knew no matter what he was, you could not just randomly burp. I really was quite concerned. How do you control that then? Well, again, I could have controlled it by leaping across the table every time he burped and shoving my hand across his burpy little mouth. That probably would have worked and probably would have been embarrassing in restaurants, and he still would have run around and burped. That's control. Now, it really was something I was worried about. I didn't think it was good for him socially just to be this burp guy. But I also knew that he was old enough that controlling it that way wouldn't probably last or work, and would probably contribute to the challenge of the whole thing. So try to empower it by telling someday when you're older and you need a job and talking to him professionally in psychology, saying, you know, you set grooves and habits, and if you're not careful one of these days, when you least expect it, the proudest moment of your life, when they're congratulating you or saying I do, you'll go bleh, and that will be really embarrassing for all of us. Didn't really work. I tried, again, the game of how many days without a burp. I tried to tie that to monetary compensation, saying that maybe it was possible to have a no burp allowance. We had burp-free zones in the house. I tried everything I possibly could think of in the realm of empowerment, but he still had the ability to say, it's my body, it's my burp, and I'll do what I want, which led me back to, it's my house and you won't, which led us to a huge impasse. Where's that line where burping is no longer cute? We ate the fruit prematurely. Suddenly we knew everything we could do, and no concept of the consequences of what was appropriate or not. We could have all sorts of dark thoughts that we never even knew existed because all that was opened up in us. And we had the ability to say, because it's my right. I bring up the burping because I feel that way a lot with masks. This week, for the first time in a while, I was exposed to several people that had COVID. And at least one of them was not wearing a mask. That's when good burping goes bad. That's when suddenly that burp in itself, that statement, that expression of myself, is now causing potential harm to other people. You guys know I've talked about my concern with that. How do I deal with people who don't wear masks? It's a whole different thing when you are dealing with them because they have COVID and they take off their mask. And that's that earlier thing that I said about Christianity in loving your enemies. These people are not my enemies, they're my friends. Or at least my acquaintances. They're people that I know professionally, some of them personally, and they are so fierce in what they feel is their right that they really are now probably giving a risk to myself and to Mom. And that's really rough. I've understood more, I think, than ever, the desire to reach across and just shove a mask on somebody's head. And that is the Old Testament God. You're not getting it. You're not getting it. So here's what's going to happen. I've understood it because it gets into my world of power. I can't protect myself from you yet. I don't have a vaccine. You clearly have been diagnosed as a symptomatic sufferer of COVID. And Bible study together in the same room would be a challenge for me, but I might do it. But if you take off your mask when I do it, I feel violated. I feel misled. I feel distrustful. And I feel like I want to shove that mask back on your face in a sort of aggressive way, even if it's Bible study. That comes then with that New Testament concept that says, but we have choice. In the scripture you heard that's that issue of rights and responsibilities. So, what can I do? Well, I can leave. I can just get up and leave. I don't have to say anything. That is the ultimate exertion of my own power then. You don't have to wear a mask and I don't have to stay here with you. Where is that issue within Christian times where that's where we're called? Where do we stay with the leper and where do we run from them? That has been a real issue within my Advent ponders for me. Where, when I say I want to help people, and I really do, where is the risk not worth it? Would I save my worst enemy? Would I save my best friend if they're burping out toxic COVID fumes? That brought me back to the thought of Esau, and we talked about that. So at the end of the day, what we live in now is a system. Esau, remember that God, although it said hated, we said did not support. That particular issue was a world where we could sort of do what we wanted, where we didn't have to live collectively or as a society. Jacob being one where we had to live as a society by rules. God's rules, man's rules, all sorts of rules. Where you couldn't spit on the sidewalk. Where you couldn't text while driving. Where you couldn't smoke in a restaurant. Where you wear a mask during a pandemic. And it doesn't matter what you have inside that wants to get out. It matters that we role model Christian behaviors. The sense of community and a family. It's Advent and it conjoins with a time in our country where we've been through a really rough election cycle. And now we are called to move past it. Remember, that is our choice. In my mind, I would say you are called to delete the emails that come in asking for money to fight this, that, or the other, or to immediately go into funding next election cycle so we can flip this, that, or the other. And then we move into what it's like to truly be brothers and sisters conjoined in Christ. So that when the manger comes, that reenactment, that Christmas card in our mind, we can feel that we are holding hands with gazillions of people that we will never meet. We're joined in that same memory. Because where I may not have the same Christmas card memory as you, somebody else does. And that is the best armor for any doom scrolling or blog trolling that you can have. That's what we fix in our mind's eye to give us perspective. That can be our influence. In a world where we've talked so much, that can also be our concern. What inoculates you then against the COVID of concern, against all the things those bad people are doing that you cannot control? Christ, the birth of our Savior, a picture that you can put there. You can. And then, from then until Lent, a picture that you can live. Realize then that's rights and responsibilities. Do I think it's good to contemplate what you will do in your worst nightmare temptation? Yes. If you haven't thought about it, you should probably think about what happens when someone you love, or worse yet, or better yet, someone you hate, if you do so, takes off their mask and stares at you and says, I have COVID. What is your reaction to that? I didn't know mine until I dealt with it. That's what we can pray and contemplate and control. What then is the price of being a Christian? The price of the privilege. And that takes power and control then, power and might of God. Me telling you what you must do, trying to figure out how to force you. Or me telling you, or not telling you, but just doing what I want. Into the perspective of God, which says, here is what I need you to do. For everything there is a season. There are times to stand up. Sometimes light is under the bushel, but don't toot your horns too much about it. All those challenges that we as Christians, folk who ate the fruit and who are benefiting and not from that, now can take the bite of informed choice and say, in a new world, with a new president, in a new year, with a COVID vaccine, how do I help lead the world closer to Christ? So that when Lent does come, I know that I've done everything that I could to make Christ's vision a reality, to make his sacrifice worth it, to make his birth even more magical, because though it ends in death, the result is redemption and resurrection. This is the last of your Advent journey then. We'll be leading soon enough into Christmas. This is where you really have to decide what clutter you get out of your room and how you want to live your life with that picture of Christ in your brain. I'm struggling with it some, this year more than ever, because the world seems so out of my control. I would think some of you are struggling with the same wrestles. But I also think that the Christmas gift I make God this year, because I have not as many materials and tools and everything was picked over at Walmart, will be the best Christmas gift I've ever given him, if I do it right. Pray that I do, please. And I hope you do as well. Let's close in prayer. God, it's nearly a birthday, and we are working hard to make ourselves the best gift for you ever. But life is not making it easy. And where it may be your plan that this is as it is not ours. Please give us strength and grace and wisdom and perspective. Help us figure out whether we are called to support your power or your might, where we are supposed to tend to the leper or save others from them, because this year it's blurry. Help us find the right Christmas card, the one that somehow knits together the true meaning of your birth with all that society means to us too. In the realm of understanding that we follow the lines of Jacob more than Esau, how much can we give our fellow Christian tidings of joy, even if they don't necessarily deserve it in our eyes? Help us find a way that the season of your birth, season, not day, can bring us together to hold hands with people that we don't want to touch now, conjoined by the common vision in our brains, in our hearts, in our souls, of what it's like to have your entry into the world. And most importantly, help us recognize the real power of this Christmas, where an anniversary in itself can be transformative at a time where nations are rebuilding, where countries are reknitting, where neighbors are rediscovering friendships around the common cause of your purpose and the common joy of your blessings and season. And when Christmas is done and the new year starts, help us to keep that seed and let it grow. Even though we know there will be birds and weeds and drought, help us find a way to let it grow into the magic and majesty that exceeds the lilies of the field, that only you can imagine for us as we fulfill our destiny in your grace. We ask this in your name. Amen.
The Lord is on thy side. Bear patiently the cross of grief or pain. Lead to thy God to order and provide in every change. He faithful will remain. Be still, my soul, thy best, thy heavenly friend. Through thorny ways, lead to a joyful end. Be still, my soul, the hour is hastening on, when we shall be forever with the Lord, when disappointment, grief, and fear are gone. Sorrow forgot, love's purest joys restored. Be blessed we shall meet at last.